Chapter 491 put the Lookism power scaling scene in absolute shambles by not only having Seokji beat James Lee through the good old overused flashback technique, but also introducing, well, not really introducing, but I guess you could say officially naming a new power system that has to do with thresholds. After I read the chapter, I immediately opened the Reddit, which I do not advise you to do, and I would probably refrain from doing it from now on, because truthfully I'd rather get RKO'd by a snapping turret. I noticed that a lot of people are still confused about what this power system exactly is and what a threshold might be, so I decided why not make a video explaining what this whole new power system exactly is. So the literal definition of a threshold is a level or point or value above which something is true or will take place and below which it is not or will not. This definition plays a role in comparing it to the likes of mastery, which is a slightly different concept. They do have their similarities, however from what I understood, mastery has to do specifically with the trait that one person has which is unique to them. For example, for Eli Jang and Samuel So reaching mastery in their own respective fighting styles, a threshold is almost the same except for the fact that it occurs in concepts which every character shares. Starting off strong with the power threshold is represented by a bright red aura, and it is very self-explanatory, associated with the amount of power a fighter can put into their attacks. It could be shown as a change of pupil color or an actual aura on a person's hand or leg depending on what they use to attack, and this could help distinguish between a normal attack and an attack with this power threshold behind it. This threshold was overcame, whatever the fuck, by three characters in the series, one of them being Seokji during his recent fight with James Lee, another one being Taesu, which was also in his fight with James Lee, and finally Hudson during his fight with the fathers in the first affiliate. As a matter of fact, it was shown in both of his eyes in one panel, but I'm not really sure if this signifies anything or if it's really just not that deep. Also, one more thing, there was a panel where Jae-hong was shown to have both a blue and a red aura around his attacks, which is quite the anomaly, I'm not gonna lie. And there's two possibilities for this. One is that Jae-hong has been him the whole entire series and is the only character to overcome two thresholds in the same sequence of attacks besides James Lee, and the other possibility is that it's just a cool effect BTJ like to use. The next threshold is speed, which is represented by the color blue. A fun fact about this threshold, it is the one which the highest amount of characters in Lookism have overcome, and it's currently sitting at 6. First off, obviously Seokji. He had to overcome this threshold to grab James Lee's ass cheeks before he could react and throw him onto the ground, and overcoming this threshold solidifies him as the character with the most confirmed thresholds overcome in the series. The next character is Gang Soap, which isn't canonically confirmed per se to have overcome this threshold, but any human being with an IQ higher than that of a raccoon would be able to assume that considering Zack is his student and he overcame this fairly quick, Gang Soap would have overcome this threshold as well. Now the final three are James Lee, Sinu Han, and Elite, the invisible attack users. James was shown to use this multiple times in his fight against Seokji, and Sinu is I guess a special case because his speed threshold is not represented by the color blue, it's actually purple, and Elite was shown to use his speed threshold in his fight against Ji Chang. The next threshold is Toughness, which is colored dark green, emphasis on dark because there are two other forms of thresholds which are also colored green. Toughness is a threshold that was overcome by Seokji during his fight with James Lee, as well as by Zack during one of his fights in the first affiliate, which I don't remember exactly. However, it is important to note that there is a difference between Zack's toughness threshold and his boxer pride form. It would also be safe to assume that Gang Soap overcame this threshold as well. Now the next threshold is one that was actually introduced to us in the recent chapter and we've actually never seen it before, which is Technique. It is represented by the color pink, and the only actual representation of it that we've seen would be in James Lee's fight. However, for you theorists out there, I guess you could assume that Sinu's purple aura was a mixture between the speed threshold and the technique threshold, since Sinu is also a user of invisible attacks, and the colors blue and pink make a pastel purple, although Sinu's purple aura was more of a dark purple. And if you believe that James is Elite's second body, then I guess you could say that Elite has overcome this threshold as well. However, this all would be literal speculation, and we've only seen James Lee use it for sure. The next threshold is one which was created for its character specifically, yet funnily enough it was never given a name in the series. I'm referring to the threshold that Warren overcomes when he enters CQC in this fight. Many people are theorizing that this is going to be called the precision threshold, however there isn't an official name for this threshold, only the fact that it is colored orange. Resilience. This is a threshold that has a lot of misconceptions surfacing around it. Many people are mistaking it with toughness because it looks green when you don't zoom into the panel properly. However, the entire sequence of events hints at this being resilience, and this is based on Seokdu's dialogue, not to mention that this isn't even green in the first place. When you zoom into the panel properly and use any version of eyedropper you want, you would realize that this is more of a violet or purple color. Resilience is indeed the threshold that Samuel has overcome, and it is represented by the color violet. Now the last few I'm a bit hesitant on whether to actually call them thresholds or not, because they aren't necessarily considered traits that a character can train and overcome through fighting, but regardless I'll mention them anyway. First we got the overcoming threshold or the conviction threshold. Pretty self-explanatory. You get slammed the entire fight, then realize you're in a manhwa and not in real life. So you turn your eye purple and overcome your opponent and end up winning the fight, and that's the conviction threshold for you. Next up is Killer Instinct, which is represented by a brighter version of the purple that is used for the overcoming or conviction threshold, and it's pretty much not even a threshold, it's just a form that Jake enters when his eye turns bright purple and his aim changes mid-fight from wanting to beat his opponent to actually wanting to end their life. Again, not really a threshold, which is why I didn't want to include it, but I did anyway to save you the time of commenting about it. Next up is another one which I don't consider a threshold, but it does show up in a character's eye, so I guess I do have to include it, and this is Kagiroi. This happens when Ryuhei picks up his berserker and his eye turns green, and it was mainly shown in his fight against Gun where he had his own weapon get used against him and lost the fight. The penultimate threshold is Animal Instinct, not only because of the fact that it was shown in the same fight as Samuel's Resilience threshold against Soktu, but it's also a character specific aura for Eli, kind of like Warren's. Anyway, the Animal Instinct threshold is only confirmed to have been overcome by Eli Jang so far, and it is represented by the color bright green. The last one that I'd like to mention before I end this recording is Vin Jin's threshold. It's never given a name or anything, it's just him getting bullied about having polychoria and then, excelling in his fight. Again, not really an authentic threshold, just thought I'd mention it because, why not?